Department of Buildings. The mayor cut 26 positions, and we're so far restored 6, and I'm hopeful we will restore more on May 16th. I'm trying to think of some of the other highlights. We had I think this is a major piece of legislation in terms of what we call equity and changing the landscape with regard to wealth or wealth building. We adopted a couple of years ago a program, baby bonds. Children born into poverty would have deposited into a government account $1,000 a year, which accrues interest at the end of 18 years, assuming they still live in the district. They can access the money for limited purposes, such as going to college or starting a business. The mayor had cut that, essentially eliminated it, and it looks like we'll be able to restore that. On the transportation front, there's been a lot of criticism of some changes that Councilmember Allen made. He did cut some dollars out of street repairs and resurfacing. But if I remember correctly, he left something close to $100 million available next year for streets, which is far more than they've been spending. So it's not really a cut. He also figured out how to fund the free fare bus initiative that the council adopted last year and that the mayor chose to cut. We got a letter today from WMATA saying they wanted us to delay this for a year, which I find disappointing. But they also said that they want a regional conversation, meaning talking with Maryland and Virginia about bus fares regionally, which could be a good thing. So it looks like that fare-free proposal will wait a year. There was another part to that legislation, which was extending service on the 12 busiest routes to overnight. And that does affect some routes in your area. The S buses, the 70 lines on Georgia U Street, and the 90s on U Street, and the H buses. Those will all have overnight routes. The letter from WMATA made it clear that they have no problem with that. I will tell you, I've made it clear to them that I have a problem with them telling us what we do with bus service in the district, but I am willing to have a regional conversation. So I am pretty sure that we will be extending hours on those bus routes. The mayor cut the circulator and cut 3 routes, one of which is the why am I blanking now? The Woodley Park circulator line. And we're going to look to see if we can restore that. At yesterday's informal work session, members indicated support for that. So I can't promise it'll get restored, but we will look at that. The mayor cut, I shouldn't say cut, she reduced the contribution for next year's the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is the flagship program for creating more affordable housing. Given the tightness of our budget and also the comments from members, I don't think we're going to look to be increasing the HPTF contribution. However, the mayor also practically zeroed out emergency rental assistance program, and we're going to try to restore it to this year's level. She put $8 million in the budget, and this year we spent $43 million halfway through the year. Now, she did get some additional dollars this year from federal money, and maybe she'll be able to do that next year. We're going to see if we can get it back up to 43. Not a promise, but a goal. And you think related to that, the mayor also substantially cut a program called Access to Justice, where we provide to the DC Bar Foundation substantial amount of money to nonprofit organizations who have attorneys who help indigent clients, such as in landlord-tenant court or before agencies, DC and federal, where they're trying to get benefits such as SSI and have been denied. Lawyers really can make a difference. And the mayor cut that program almost in half, and we're trying to restore that. I see that as being almost like an investment. So some things we do, like emergency rental assistance, is short-term in its effect and duration. Somebody's at risk of being evicted because they can't pay their rent. Emergency rental assistance helps. Access to justice has much longer lasting consequences, positive consequences. Giving somebody access to a lawyer who can give them rights, benefits such as SSI can have a continuous benefit to that individual. So we're going to try to restore that. I'm trying to remember other committees in terms of major actions. The mayor in her budget sent over an MPD budget that actually reflected some cuts in dollars. The police force is considerably smaller today than it was. And so there are fewer dollars in the budget. The council is not cutting that. And I believe the committee and judiciary recommended the various hiring benefits and retention bonuses that the mayor had recommended. Interestingly, the mayor proposed moving crime scene search from the independent forensic lab to MPD, and that masked some of the cut to MPD. And I think council members want to keep crime scene search at the independent forensic lab, which means it's going to look like we're cutting MPD, but we're not. Councilmember Nadeau did a number of things with her committee, which has oversight over operations and public works, but I'm going to leave it to her to explain the changes that she made there. Those are the highlights that I can think of. And why don't I at this point take questions?
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Lakatos.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and thank you, Chairman Mendelson, for coming tonight. I had one question and then a kind of a brief comment about the budget. I was wondering if the Comprehensive Justice and Policing Reform Act, the one that the House Republicans were trying to block, if there's funding for that in the budget, or if it's still subject to appropriation for the future. And then my kind of comment was more briefly about when we're thinking about, well, I appreciate the 24/7 buses, you and Councilmember Nadeau are working on that. I think that's going to be really big for ANC 1B, but if you're thinking about transitioning funds around the K Street Transitway in terms of infrastructure, I would just put a plug in that the highest ridership bus lines in the district run through ANC 1B, George Avenue, 7th Street, U Street, Florida Avenue, and 16th Street have the highest ridership ones. But that was more just a comment, no need to respond there. But on the question about the police reform.
Tell you the truth, I don't remember what part of the bill was subject to appropriation. And I also don't remember that any committee funded that, but the entire bill was not subject to appropriation. So there are parts of it that are in effect now. In fact, I would estimate 2/3 to 3/4 of the bill has been lost since 2020. And we can only pass bills on a temporary basis if there's no fiscal cost or the fiscal cost has been paid. So the bulk of the bill is effective or will be effective, and whatever is subject to appropriation, which I don't remember, I don't think committees have funded. Do you happen to remember what might be subject to appropriation?
Would it be I think there was like a database, that's sort of the transparency database for MPD or OPC. I'm not exactly sure what it was.
Yeah, that makes sense, because there would be a cost for designing or building the database. I don't think it was funded, but I'm not certain. The FOP, by the way, is just furious about the bill. And before this meeting, I was reading the letter that they sent to the Senate leadership, urging that the bill be rejected by the Senate. They just hate the fact that we took away their ability to bargain discipline. But studies around the country have shown that police bargaining discipline leads to really perverse consequences.
Commissioner Kinsick.
Yes, Chairman Mendelson, thank you for giving us some time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank
Just
you.
want to see how your office is working with the local police departments, making sure they have the proper tools, monies, whatever it may be, to help with the gun increase that's just taken over the city. It seems nowadays that if you bump someone or look at someone the wrong way, you're getting shot. So I really think that's something of a concern of my constituents, and I can honestly say probably for most of Washington, D.C. and the people that are online. Could you give me some of those ways that we're doing or what we're doing to help or try to minimize those risks? Thank you.
Well, sure. The problem with gun violence has been of concern to council members and also law enforcement agencies. I sit on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which is comprised of the leaders of all the law enforcement agencies, MPD, CSOSA, U.S. Attorney, so forth. There is no proposal pending before the council, either in the budget or separate legislation, that would make a difference in terms of gun violence that we're not moving or supportive of. One of the problems, and I actually mentioned this to Senator Durbin, with whom I met this morning, that one of the problems we have with gun violence is federal restrictions on ATF, sharing on a proactive basis data regarding gun purchases in other states. So we know that a lot of guns here are trafficked from Virginia, I believe North or South Carolina, but it's very hard for law enforcement to do anything because ATF can't do anything on a prospective basis. And we can't do anything about that because that's federal. We have a strong gun control law in the district. I would argue maybe the strongest in the country. There's nothing that is talked about on a national level or in other states that we don't already have here. A red flag law, large capacity magazine, requirement for registration. Our large capacity magazine prohibition is being challenged right now in the courts, and the conservatives or the Second Amendmenters, whatever you want to call them, have really been very effective over the last couple of decades, changing the courts so that we are increasingly getting bad rulings. And I don't know, I don't know what we can do about that, but we keep tinkering with our law to stay one step ahead of unfavorable decisions from the courts. I think that what needs to happen to reduce gun violence in the city, in terms of law enforcement, because there's some other strategies outside law enforcement, is for the mayor to work more closely with the chief with regard to what the chief or MPD needs to close cases, and for MPD and the U.S. Attorney to get clearer on why the U.S. Attorney declines or plea bargains so many cases, declines prosecution or plea bargains to a lesser offense. And I think, well, and I also think that MPD needs to make more of a focus of building community trust. So, for example, I live in Ward 6 across from a school with a large recreation field. There was a homicide there one evening a year and a half ago. Two teams were playing flag football, and two of the players just got into arguing throughout the game, and then one of them shot the other afterwards. And all of a sudden, nobody knew who those players were. I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course, they knew who the players were, but a lack of community trust in the police, people didn't want to come forward. So the police have to focus more on that. I think the case closure would make the biggest difference, and vigorous prosecution by the U.S. Attorney. Statistically, if I remember correctly, both homicide perpetrators and homicide victims have been before the police, like arrested and maybe prosecuted 11 times on average. And when you look at individual cases, you wonder why that the charge 2 years ago was dropped from a felony to a misdemeanor, for example, which affects how a subsequent case will be handled by the courts. So I've been pushing through the CJCC for better information with regard to charging decisions by the U.S. Attorney, which both reflects what the police are doing and what the U.S. Attorney is doing. It was
Thank
a
you.
long answer, but I hope that helps.
No, it does. Oh, thank you very much, Chairman. And DC is very lucky to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
Thanks. Thank you, Chairman Mendelson, for joining us this evening. This question is not specific to the budget, although please feel free to answer it in terms of the budget if you like. But can you speak just broadly about any efforts that you are leading or supporting to increase the amount of affordable housing and the amount of housing broadly in the district?
We're doing a lot. The biggest thing we're doing is the Housing Production Trust Fund. The mayor's proposed only $100 million next year, only $100 million, as if that's not very much. It is a lot. And in fact, when Mayor Bowser became mayor, the city had never put, I think, anything over 70 or $75 million into the Housing Production Trust Fund, and she made it a goal to put $100 million in. We have a lot of other programs for housing preservation. For example, a few years ago, we established a tax abatement for nonprofit organizations that acquire existing affordable housing and maintain it as affordable housing. Gosh, there's a long list, and I'm blanking on the different strategies. You know, as the chair of the council, I participate in meetings that the National League of Cities convenes with other city council presidents. And typically what we talk about is affordable housing. It is a challenge across the country. And in my view, it's been exacerbated by federal policies of disinvesting from public housing. So it's a challenge everywhere. And which reminds me that we continue to put more dollars into the housing authority, which is public housing. And we are trying to get more of the, we're trying to get public housing, the authority to not only by giving them more resources, but also by reorganizing themselves to get more of these vacant units back on the market more quickly. Or maybe I shouldn't say market, get back into use more quickly. I will add this. My own view is that while we're most focused on extremely low income housing, in my view, we have to be focused on all bands, because even at market rate, people who don't need subsidized housing are always looking for cheaper housing they can buy, housing they can afford. And when they go into neighborhoods where the housing is still affordable, they start driving up the prices there. So let's give them other alternatives. The city doesn't have to do that, but we shouldn't stand in the way of the market doing that. So more market rate housing, and then more workforce housing, such as for firefighters, police, teachers, and then more housing at the different bands of affordability below 80% and below 30%. We have a lot of policies such as disposition of land where it has to be for extremely low income. So these are all the different things we're doing. In this budget, because it's not 400 million, it's 100 million. It looks like we're putting much less in, but we're still contributing in different ways over $1 billion a year in housing or affordable housing.
Thank you. Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat that I think you already answered. but I'm going to ask it just for the sake of transparency, and make sure this person feels heard. But do you think housing affordability is best addressed through increasing more market rate housing or building city subsidized affordable housing?
There has to be both. The city, in my view, should not be subsidizing market rate housing, but we should be looking to make sure that there aren't barriers that we've put up. The city needs to subsidize affordable housing, and we define affordable. But as I said, we need both.
Thank you. And then we do have one other question. If there are any other community questions, please add them into the Q&A, or if you would like to ask your question live, please raise your little hand. This question is, I think it's asking for any stats, but I'm just going to read it. Is the chairman aware that none of the cities that have implemented free fare transit have seen an increase in ridership?
I believe the opposite is correct. Now, I don't have statistics in front of me, but when we first discussed this with Randy Clark, who's the general manager at WMATA, he pointed out several cities that had seen an increase in ridership. There are several reasons why I think fare-free buses is a good idea. For one thing, we're already subsidizing about 90% of the cost of operation. Now, don't hold me to that number, but it's a substantially high number. So this is just extending that subsidy further. The bus, when we talk about equity, and that shouldn't be our only driving purpose, but buses are overwhelmed. Our bus service is overwhelmingly used by low income and people of color. And so this is a benefit that's available to everybody, but will be especially beneficial to low income folks. That's the second reason. Third, it makes bus a little bit more attractive. I won't say hugely, but a little bit more attractive because it's free. And people will find that riding the bus isn't horrible at all. And another fourth reason is that, and it seems a little counterintuitive, but free fares actually makes bus service faster and more reliable. And the reason for that is because there's significant delays with the boarding process. If you don't have to stop at the fare box, in fact, if you can board from both the front and the back door, then bus service is going to be quicker and it's going to be more reliable. It'll get to you at the time it's supposed to get to you. I think it will induce demand. If it induces demand, then we'll see greater frequency. If we see greater frequency, that in turn will make bus more attractive. And then finally, I believe that the way that we reduce car congestion is not by making car driving painful or less attractive, but by making alternatives easier and more attractive. And so fare-free bus service should help with regard to congestion. Good evening, council member. So there are many, many benefits in my view to fare-free bus service. And it's as what I picked up from the general manager last fall when we developed this was that it has been seen as beneficial in other cities.
Thank you for that. We have one final question from the community. Could you explain at all what is going on with the K Street bus project? I support free buses and rapid bus lanes and know how much of a mess K Street is, so I'm a bit lost by this current debate.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting discussion. There's about $120 million in the budget for rebuilding K Street. It's about 5 or 6 blocks. K Street is a mess. And WMATA has said that if we can improve throughput for buses on K Street, that will help the bus system more broadly. What WMATA needs is, or what they see, I think they want is 2 dedicated lanes on K Street, which could be done now. I'm not arguing that it should be, but it could be done now. But that leaves another, I think it's 4 or 5 lanes that WMATA doesn't care about. And the design, everybody tells me the design is not very good. And we need to fix the design. It's true that Councilmember Allen took money from the K Street project to restore the funding for the fare-free buses. But I completely agree with him and others that the K Street plan has got to be redesigned. It was designed about 10 years ago. It was designed based on pre-pandemic commuter patterns. The world has changed, maybe not hugely, but it has changed. And everybody says that the K Street Transitway needs to go through, I'll put nicely, a design refresh. I would add, and this is where I disagree with the mayor, that right now in 2023 and in 2024, what businesses need downtown is people coming back downtown. And if you tear up K Street, you're going to be hurting businesses along K Street. So the timing for this couldn't be worse. Now, you know, the mayor just brushes that off, but the mayor's had several proposals for recovering downtown, which I think have been wildly off the mark. And if I sound like I'm critical here, I am. You know, changing the height limit, not only do I think the height limit shouldn't change, but changing the height limit means that buildings would get redesigned taller 10 years from now. That's not a way to recover downtown today. She talks about tearing up K Street. The business owners, property owners on K Street have said, no, please, not right now. She finds these proposals that will take a number of years for implementation, and the recovery of downtown has to be quicker. It has to be focused on what do we do to get people back. So, for example, use the Commission on Arts and Humanities to put arts programming in some of these vacant retail spaces on a temporary pop-up basis, or through DSLBD, encourage some small businesses and entrepreneurs to do pop-ups in some of these vacant retail spaces. Just more activation, get people down here, and also deal with the public safety perception. But activation, people, is what's going to make a difference in downtown. That's what will make a difference in terms of recovery. Jackhammering K Street for the next 3 years, in my view, is not a recovery step. Maybe good for K Street in the long run, but not good for recovery.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your time and walking us through these important topics. Would love to have you back at any point. I know your schedule is very busy, but thank you so much.
I try to make myself available for ANCs. So anytime you want me, let me know. And thank you all for the work you do. I'm going to disappear. So Councilmember Nadeau, you are free to say anything bad about me you want, but somebody will report it to me.
I wouldn't do that this time of year, Chairman.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to disappear and go to another event.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I will call this meeting to order at 7:09 p.m. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Handerhan.
Present.
Commissioner Holohan.
Present.
Commissioner Sycamore noted that he would be absent. Commissioner Lakatos.
Present.
Commissioner Kensick.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Fields.
Present.
Commissioner Harris.
Present.
And Commissioner Jones present. Madam Chair, with 8 out of 9 commissioners present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner Jones.
Motion I move that we approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. We also have a consent agenda with the April draft meeting minutes. And then we do have a comment time for commissioners and community members. That comment time, apologies, that is not noted here specifically, will be 2 minutes like we had in April, 2 minutes for commissioners and 2 minutes for community members. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. We did move some things around in tonight's agenda only because we have another great guest, Councilmember Nadeau, with us. So that'll be in our executive council member, commissioner, and community announcements. Again, normally that is towards the end of the meeting, but we moved it up. And we have another guest after Councilmember Nadeau. But Councilmember Nadeau, if you want to take it away and walk us through any specifics around the budget for Ward 1 and any other kind of related items. And then commissioners, we will kick it over to any questions that you have. And then community members, just a reminder, if you have any questions, please add it into the Q&A. Or if you would like to ask it live, please raise your hand and we will get to it soon. Thank you for joining us tonight, Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for making room for me on the schedule tonight. There was so much breaking news on the budget last week that I really thought it would be important to come today. I'm glad that you got to hear from Chairman Mendelson on some of the big things the council is doing. So I will try not to be redundant. He probably mentioned yesterday we had our budget work session where we talked about our council-wide priorities, but last week the committees, and I'm the chair of the Public Works and Operations Committee, marked up our budgets with our recommendations, and I'm very excited about some of the things that we're working on. Now, just as a reminder, my new committee is the Department of Public Works for Hire Vehicles, the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, Religious Affairs, Veterans Affairs, and actually a dozen more agencies that serve our constituents. I was not thrilled about the budget when it first came out. It's a lean year for revenue, and the mayor defunded quite a few things the council members had approved, most of which were unanimous. But in our committee, we were able to find a lot of funding for important projects by raising revenue. A common theme in my budget is good governance. Many of the committee's recommendations are largely based on identifying inefficient or wasteful spending and reallocating those funds to the most important priorities of district residents. So the budget I received had cut 90 positions for the Department of Public Works in both waste management and parking enforcement. So I went ahead and restored about 50 of those. I also added almost $1 million for the self-release booting pilot, which is a really great technology we can use takes less personnel to address scofflaw vehicles and immobilize them on the roads until people can pay back their fines. I was able to finally liberate my public restroom law from one agency and move it over to my committee so we can actually get it implemented. And there will be in this new fiscal year 4 public restrooms going in as part of the pilot that was supposed to be done several years ago. I'm actually very excited because the technology has advanced since that time. And I think that we'll be able to show results very quickly with these 4 and to try to get some funds in for next year to expand. Not all 4 will be in Ward 1. That wouldn't be fair for a citywide initiative, but I will be pushing to get one in one of our highest need areas. I also am able to fund a new clean curbs pilot program, similar to something that's now being done in New York, where we'd be collecting trash through shared containers as an alternative to individual cans for homes that are serviced by the front of home pickup. An example of a place in 1B where we've had a lot of issues with this would be, say, the 1700 block of U Street, where there's a very narrow sidewalk and cans on trash day clog it all up. So our pilot is about 150 households to start, And with the shared containers, essentially, when you have your trash full, you'd walk your bag out to the curb, put it in the shared container, punch in your code and put it in there. And these will be great rat-proof containers that only the neighbors on the block have access to. Now, even though I have the Public Works Committee, I was able to direct some special funds to various initiatives in Ward 1. Nearly $4.5 million for public safety initiatives, including violence interrupters, domestic violence training, and safety ambassadors. That includes violence prevention and violence interruption services for 14th and V, which is something that the commission had requested. I also was able to fund housing vouchers for returning citizens, add money to the emergency rental assistance program, and fund a bill to support kids aging out of foster care as they head out into the world with both housing and savings accounts. There's a number of provisions I funded in committee that have recently passed. So I was able to fund the domestic workers employment rights law. I was able to fund, I believe the chairman mentioned, the street vendor bill, and a study that's required to address, to make sure we are doing the street vending program correctly. What else? So I know you talked with him at length about the free bus program. So in my committee, by levying a $2 surcharge to rideshare vehicles going downtown during and returning from downtown during rush hour, I'm able to fund free overnight bus as part of the Metro for DC program. And that is one thing that WMATA actually said they would like to work on. So I'm pretty thrilled I was able to secure that and that we'll be able to implement that in the new fiscal year. One of the things that we hear a lot from business owners actually is that their nighttime employees and their customers don't have a safe way to get home at the end of the night because bus isn't running. And so this will be a huge help there. He just talked to you about the K Street Transitway, so I'll skip that. Some additional funding in 1B. Per Commissioner Holohan's request, and I believe Handerhan too, I was able to expand the service area of the Shaw Clean Team to the 1900 block of 8th Street Northwest. They had a very specific dollar amount that it would take to get that block clean, so we threw that in there. That request came in right on time at the last minute when we were marking up, so we were able to do that. I was able to fund a grant for a pilot program at the 600 block of T Street with HIPS, which is one of our community-based organizations that does harm reduction and engagement on the street of people with substance use disorder. That's heavily, heavily needed in that block. We are not going to solve the issues we have on that block with just police, and both HIPS and the Department of Behavioral Health are there from time to time, but this would be a dedicated resource for that area. And what I've been doing more and more across the ward is making sure we have dedicated resources around behavioral health issues where we need them rather than relying on the citywide resources. So this is building on that. We are going to be having more of a community conversation about what that should look like and what services need to be had there closer to the beginning of the fiscal year. And then I also was able to expand targeted outreach through District Bridges. Now, District Bridges is the one doing the Columbia Heights Civic Plaza pilot for me. In the little more than a year that they've been out there, they've touched 170 individuals with substance use disorder and helped get dozens and dozens of them into detox and treatment. And I want to replicate that all across their service areas in Ward 1. So that's Mount Pleasant, Lower Georgia Avenue, U Street. Adams Morgan is not part of their service area, but I added funding for 2 additional safety ambassadors for the bid there. So we will be fully covered. I am going to just read a couple other things that we funded, and then I will kick it over to you all for questions because I know you have a tight agenda. I was able to funding was found by Councilmember Bonds for the local resident voting rights bill. That's my bill that expanded voting rights in local elections to our immigrant population. I restored funding to domestic violence survivor services. Chairman Mendelson probably mentioned he restored cuts to our school budgets. And we also passed legislation through the budget improving the pipeline for social workers and case managers, which is going to help in many aspects of government where we have social workers because we have a huge shortage of them. So, for example, even though we fully funded the school-based mental health program, not every school has a social worker because there just aren't enough to go around. So we're still working on finding more funds for emergency rental assistance, working on how to do a cap on the rent increases that are about to hit. Some have already hit, but there's more coming post-pandemic. I've asked that we restore funding for excluded workers, which was completely swept by the mayor. I've asked for the restoration of the circulator. I was very glad to hear Chairman Mendelson mention the circulator, because last night he was just in listening mode and I haven't gotten his feedback yet on whether he thinks he can fund it. We also are still looking for flexible scheduling funding for teachers to help with retention. And that is where I will leave it in terms of the budget. And I know you have some other topics you may want to discuss. So Madam Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just want to add quickly, very grateful for you securing money for violence interrupters at 14th and V. I know you and I have talked about it, and it's something that I will absolutely convey to former Commissioner Deborah Thomas as well. So thank you for that. Commissioner Kinsick.
Yes. Hello. How are you, Councilmember Nadeau? Thank you for being with us tonight. First off, I've already said to Lauren, but I wanted to personally thank you about 1430 Belmont. They did fix the door. It's secured. The people have spoken and you took care of it. So I appreciate that. And I just want to see if you have any updates with my friend Jamar, who calls me regularly in regards to area where they can play football because of Cardozo being, even though that's in 1B03 and where we were looking at Columbia Heights is in 1A. Somehow I got involved. I don't really know how, but I want to make sure I get back to him. So if you can respond to that, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, I had to do a little research, but I got to do a call tonight with Principal Mola at Cardozo about how the field gets scheduled. And I have a few more breadcrumbs now. This is a kind of it's a citywide issue about, just to fill everyone else in, about how do we prioritize the use of fields at both DPR and DCPS facilities. The scheduling of these is centralized, and sometimes what happens is people who have more knowledge of how to navigate government or more resources in general are the ones that get the fields because they're the ones that get in the system. And some of our longtime organizations that may just be less organized or have less supports to do admin work get kind of left in the dust. So I got a little bit more insight tonight, and I have some notes Lauren and I are going to go over tomorrow to figure out next steps. I think what we're ultimately going to have to do is work with the Department of General Services on how they prioritize groups that are wanting to use the field. But there's a couple T's I need to cross first before I do that, to make sure that our little team has done all the homework they need to do. And I don't go to them and they say, oh, but they didn't fill out the yada, So we are going to follow up on that probably tomorrow. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lakatos.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Harris. Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau, for coming. I had one question about something I saw on a budget slide about, and I had a separate comment. So I saw there's a funding $1 million for a Ward 1 Green Slow Streets project. And I don't really know what that was. And I was wondering if you might be able to give some context. And I appreciate the work on the circulator, but the second comment I had more was just about DPW. They, as you know, they're starting this new litter can installation removal process, and the way that they've designed the bureaucracy around removals and installations is really convoluted and just doesn't seem to work. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but for example, if they're going to remove a litter can, they send an email and they only send it to the main ANC email address. They don't send it to a commissioner, and then who knows who manages that. If they're going to install a litter can, they'll send a physical letter. They won't send an email to the commissioner, and there's sort of these duplicative and sort of not really well kind of understandable procedures. But I know that falls under your committee, so I kind of want to see if maybe you could look into that with Director Spriggs and the team at DPW.
Yeah. So we have worked with them a little bit so far because let me say this. I think that they have created the system in earnest, and that our feedback is critical in making it work. But this all started because our litter cans started disappearing in Ward 1 and across the city, and DPW claimed that they weren't the ones taking them, which was quite the mystery. So we have a new director, and he's being very responsive and trying to assist with this. And that's why, after our oversight hearing, when council member Parker and I were questioning them, all of a sudden you saw this new thing in 311 where you could request cans. And then we had to work with them because not all the new ANCs were in there, et cetera. So I'll say here's the good news. The good news is there's a way now to request these cans, and that for the ANC to be involved. And we can work with you on those. And once you've got those requests in, residents and commissioners alike, make sure you send them to us so we can work with you on them. We also have a running list of cans that we believe are removed. On top of that, there was some discussion at the oversight hearing about where cans are allowed to be placed. Now, in Ward 1, as you know, residential and commercial is pretty intermingled, and we do have a lot of those cans in residential areas. And DPW was trying to tell us that we couldn't have them in residential areas anymore. And that was because of a policy, not a law, but a policy that they didn't like to do it because it was noisy for overnight collection and neighbors would complain. And we had to explain that in Ward 1, that's like the least of our problems with noise. So please come collect the trash and put the cans where we need them. So it's a long way of saying we're working through some stuff, and your feedback is welcome, whatever you document and need help with. I would say the most helpful thing to do would be to put whatever you need into an email to me and Lauren, and we can work through it with DPW. But I think it's a work in progress. All right, so green slow streets. Do you remember slow streets during the pandemic at all? It was kind of lame. So this is like a non-sucky version. It's a technical term of slow streets, where you use green infrastructure and tree boxes and all kinds of cool things. So we can send you some info on it. I was trying to do a quick Google to see if there was like an easy link to send you about it, but alas, there is not. But this is I don't think the $1 million is coming to Ward 1. That might have been a typo. I think it's just that it's I don't think that they would need $1 million in Ward 1 to do a few pilots, but we'll get you more info on that, and maybe wait till it goes through, because there's a lot of moving parts right now with the DDOT budget. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
I have a couple of quick questions, and I feel like maybe this is more so longer term vision versus what's happening kind of in the budget now. But are there any plans or legislation that you might be introducing on public trash collection for multi-family homes instead of the limit right now? And also with composting, I was really excited to see it, but then disappointed because I live in a apartment building.
Yeah. So very astute question. The majority of trash collection in our city is being done by private companies, private haulers in multifam buildings. And DPW has very, very limited oversight of them. And that is something that I am trying to fix in my committee. I have the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, so I'm trying to find a few ways to sort of wrap my arms around private haulers. Councilmember Henderson proposed a bill that would increase the number of households serviced by DPW. I think it would go up to 4 or 8 unit buildings. Not going to help you, Madam Chair, but it would be a little bit of an expansion. I do think that we need to think through the logistics of it very, very carefully. And, a proposed bill allows us to do that and to have that conversation. What I want to see is better waste management, trash collection, and waste diversion writ large, regardless of who's picking it up. And we're not in a good spot on it right now. Proposing 90 vacancies being cut from DPW is not a good look either. So that's why we work so hard to restore them. Actually, one of the things that I did was there was a lot of overtime in that budget. And so we converted about 80% of the overtime funds back into full-time equivalents, which is good government, right? Have more jobs, not, more overworked people. And then the other thing we did, which was really fun, was we went to the Office of Revenue Analysis and said, hey, if we add parking enforcement officers, will you certify new revenue from the tickets that they issue as on spec? And they were like, sure. So we did those two things, and that allowed us to put about 50 positions back, which will help with this. With the composting, again, this is a pilot. It's going to be very small. Did everybody get the link to sign up for a single family? Do you guys have it? We can put it in okay. We can make sure it's out there again too, but last I checked, Ward 1 wasn't fully subscribed. There we go. Thanks, Commissioner. It's out for bid right now, so we don't know exactly who's going to administer it. It's probably going to be one of the entities that already does pick up for compost in the city. The pilot hopefully will get us some really good data. Again, what I'm really excited about with the new director is he seems highly motivated to get things done that we're telling him we need done. It's not a debate if it's the law, he's doing it. And I know that sounds like duh, but believe me, having done oversight on the DC Council for 8 years now, it's not a duh for a lot of directors. So this is kind of a relief. So anyway, we're going to be focused in on a lot of this. The other thing is they're hiring a new director of the Office of Waste Diversion. And one of the things that I pushed for was consultation with the environmental community on who they hire to try to get someone with real expertise in that job, rather than just someone moving up the ranks, but someone who's got training in waste diversion, because that we're not meeting our waste diversion goals in the city. We're just really missing the mark on that. So I think there's a lot of area to work with there, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and then I do see one hand raised, so we'll get to the Q&A first. First question is, please explain why you decided to upflum the public land at 1617 U Street without community input.
Okay, good question. So we actually had a very lengthy discussion when we were going through the what's it called? The comprehensive plan rewrite. I actually held an entire town hall on this where folks were able to ask questions, and we were able to talk about the different properties along U Street. We are very fortunate that we have a number of public properties still available for us to build affordable housing on. All of our public properties require 30% of the housing built on them to be affordable, and 30% of more is more. U Street, being a main corridor, a wide corridor, is one that is ripe for a denser building, more people living there. And we already have a number of very tall buildings on U Street that set that precedent. So it made a great deal of sense, given our goals as a city and a ward to produce more affordable housing and community amenities with our public land, to recommend that site be higher density. We also knew that putting things in the future land use map provides an opportunity for further discussion in the community when somebody either does a map amendment or otherwise comes before the zoning commission to increase the density in the zoning there. So that is the process we're going through now. And I think we've been able to gather a lot of good feedback.
Thank you. I guess related to that, there is one other question in the Q&A, but related to that, did you receive the ANC 1B resolution regarding the zoning map amendment proposed for 1617 U Street? I'm assuming you did, but if not, we can send it to you.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Thanks for checking, anonymous writer.
Yeah. Okay, last one in the Q&A, and then we'll move on to the audience for live questions. Won't the $2 surcharge most impact the service workers who take Ubers to their jobs in downtown?
Well, that's a good question. That is not what the data shows that most people are doing. So the demographics of ride-hail users do not support a claim of disproportionate impact on low income or marginalized groups, especially when compared to public transit riders who stand to benefit from my proposal. Service workers in particular will benefit from that 24-hour bus on those priority routes. I'm certainly happy to provide the data that we used. A lot of it is in my committee report, which is on the council website. But no, I do not think that that is a major concern. Also note that the surcharge is $2 and it applies to people who are arriving downtown and nearby. So like the wharf, a couple places in Southwest, that's the zone. So it applies to people arriving in that zone from 7 a.m. to noon and leaving the zone from noon to 7 p.m. And the reason that we focused on this area is because it's where there's the most congestion for rideshare. And the reason we focused on rideshare is because that's the jurisdiction I have in my committee. I am a proponent of more widespread actual congestion pricing, where we look at, times of day and the type of vehicles and where they're coming from. This is simply a $2 surcharge on the rideshare vehicles because we know that since they've come on the scene, they have cannibalized public transit. Most people using rideshare, the data shows, used to take transit, bike, or walk. Not many of them are private vehicle owners, although we know that some people will always tell me, I do that instead of taking my car. So I hope that information is helpful. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, please let me know.
Great, thank you. Okay, Cedric, can you go ahead and take the first person that you see off of mute? And then Commissioner Jones, if you can go ahead and launch the timer for 2 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good evening, Brian. I want to say thank you for finding the monies for 7th and T for the human tragedy and suffering that takes place in that block, and helping to help stem that, turn that around, and provide long overdue resources. My next issue is a slightly budget, but it has to do with the neighborhood that I call home, east end of U Street, North Shaw, and it's the small area plan that was done under the Duke plan. And it's a subsection of that called 9th Street plan. And it's been ignored for 20 years. And I'm wondering, can you help fund a revisement to the 9th Street plan? And explicitly, there's a piece in it regarding the HFA site that's supposed to be a central piece to the Duke plan and the 9th Street plan. And I want to ensure we can upzone the HFA site so we can all get what we want out of this, including more housing, but also the required commerce in the first couple floors, including some office space, so that we all get what we want. Can you commit to upzoning this property, helping or at least support up the upzoning of this property, so we all get what we want? And two, can you help out with this 9th Street area plan out of the Office of Planning, because it's been disregarded for 20 years. I don't want to spend everybody's time reiterating everything that's wrong there, but I'm happy to spend more time. We've talked about it a little, but can you commit to these several items: upzoning the HFA site and a recommitment to the 9th Street neighborhood plan with the Office of Planning's help?
Well, I already upflummed the Housing Finance Agency site. I can't change the zoning. The Zoning Commission is the only one who can do that. That project is already up for redevelopment. They already selected a development partner. And so, when they begin the renderings and proposals there, they will certainly come before the ANC and community around that. They have a mandate around affordable housing as part of their organization, so you won't see that surely in the proposal. I believe it is the Gyro Lynch companies that won the bid. I was just quickly Googling to see if I could find the press release, but I didn't immediately see it. But they announced that last year sometime. The Duke plan has not been fully realized and implemented, and it is still a living plan that we work from. And it is something that we should be proud of because it is evergreen. It's still relevant now. And that's what we need to be working off of in this corridor. And that is what I was working from when I did my work on the comprehensive plan. I don't remember if there was another question, but hopefully I got to them. And if not, Frank, I get to see you pretty regularly, so I'm sure we will get to keep the conversation going.
Cedric, go ahead and enable the next person to speak. Then Commissioner Jones, if you can also.
Oh, I see we have one of the inspectors from DPW. He may be trying to answer your litter can question.
I just saw that. Mr. Ngia, you can take yourself off of mute.
Okay, good evening. I hear people talk about the public litter receptacle. Usually, to install those receptacles, they do a survey of the area, and also they install them in areas where there is a bus stop. Now, they have been removing them recently because what I found out on Georgia Avenue, Sherman Avenue, 1113, even 1113th Street, 14th Street, people abuse those receptacles. You see them overflowing is because people use household trash or businesses. There are two businesses we identify on Georgia Avenue that were using only those public receptacles to dispose of their trash. So I gave them citations and I contacted the ANC, they stopped now. So that's why they removed them. They've been removing them in some places. Another thing is somebody talk about, there was a question on the chat room. About her neighborhood becoming that people dump trash in her neighborhood.
Oh yeah, it was one of the questions about something. It's the neighborhood's becoming a dump.
Yes, 1800 block of 5th Street. I can't remember.
Yes, it was the 1800 block of 5th Street.
Yes, so if I know the area, then I will see, I can explain 1800 block of 5th Street. So what happens sometimes is that people feel that this place is like their point of collection, but everybody's point of collection is the front or rear of their property. Because if people bring trash on your property, in front of your property, if trash is missed or if the place they put it there in the wrong time and it attracts rodents, when we come, we issue the citation to the owner of that property. So that's why we want everybody to place that trash in front of their properties. Not in front. People have in some neighborhood, they have a common place where they bring that trash into. So we discourage that. We want everybody to put that trash in front of their property. I know on the 6th Street, they have a problem. People from Florida, they bring that trash on the 6th Street, 1900 block. And that brings a lot of problems there for the people who live on that street. So yes, that's the problem. But Commissioner Nadeau, is Commissioner Nadeau, one issue we have in DPW at SWEEP is that when we issue the citations, when they go to court, the judge slash them. When the judge slash them, people know that they can use the court in their benefit. We want to meet with you to discuss this issue. I don't know how you can talk to the court so that they be more strict with these rules, because people know they come to court, the judge will slash the ticket. I have an example I received. I got this week. I issued citation to somebody. He didn't have a trash collector. He was just dumping his trash anywhere, in the rear of his property and in the rear of other people's properties. I issued them several tickets. Out of over $8,000, the judge charged him only $648 or 70-some dollars. So that's unfair because it tells this person that they can break the law. The court will help them, the court will support them. So we need your help to address the court, the Office of Administrative Hearings.
You got it. We'll get together. They're also in my committee now, so we'll have a meeting with the both of you. So thank you. I should note too, one of the other things that was cut in the mayor's budget was the sweep inspectors. Those are the folks who move around the ward and do the ticketing for the illegal dumping and help get it all cleaned up. And so I was able to restore those as well. So one of the things that Mr. Njaya brings up that is back to your question, Madam Chair, about sort of the philosophy and the vision. In my mind, like illegal dumping into a can, like household waste, is a problem in terms of the way we manage waste. But what I'd like to get us to is more of a no wrong door kind of trash collection situation. So, we need to collect it and get it off the streets no matter what. So does it matter if it's in the municipal can or your back can? So that's a whole thing. But by the way, David Benny bailed me out. That $1 million is for all of Ward 1 Greenslow streets. He thinks it's going to be about 3 blocks. He does not know which 3. And it is, as I suggested, a mix of green infrastructure and traffic calming. So stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.
We have a
That
lot of
sounds
blocks in 1B. So, just saying.
Send them over.
Cedric, can you go ahead and take Mr. Patrick Nelson off of mute while you do that? There is a question in the Q&A around 1617 U Street and accommodating the historic kind of district and the surrounding area. Just to note there, I think one, and I'm sure Councilmember Nadeau might add a little bit more context, HPRB might handle that. However, it is a little difficult because this isn't in a historic district, so it will not be going in front of HPRB.
Right. So the property is not in a historic district, so it does not go before HPRB. It does not have any historic value. And there is not a mechanism for, say, restoring a property back to what was there in the past in service of historic preservation. So that's not a thing. However, one thing that I did put into the future land use map was language around a step down on the back side on V Street so that you wouldn't have a towering building on that side where you have the row homes. So hopefully that explains that for the writer.
And just as a note, we will, if there are any other community comments or questions, please raise your hand, but this is kind of the final call for that. Mr. Nelson, you can go ahead, and I think you've already taken yourself off of mute.
I just have a quick comment and a question for Brianne. My comment relates to the trash discussion that we've been talking about. I totally understand where we're going with trying to be conscious of the environment, but the real issue that I have personally is that by removing the garbage cans like they did along Georgia Avenue, it may have saved the city from having to pick up trash, which I think is part of the job of the city. But what it has now done is moved all of that trash down on my street. I've been a resident of this street for 30 years, and I now have to go out almost every day and pick up trash. And I'm not talking little pieces of trash. I'm talking about people that go up and buy food and eat a little bit of it and throw it in the street in front of my house because there are no receptacles. And all it's doing is pushing all of the trash from Georgia Avenue that used to be picked up in a receptacle, and they removed like almost 4 of them onto the streets of the residential areas. And then because there's so many cars on my street that don't abide by the signs that say move your car at a certain time to get the street cleaners, when the guy comes down to try and street clean the street, he has to drive down the middle of the street because he can't do anything. And that's happened now at least within the last 2 weeks, 3 or 4 times. So I've gone out at least 3 or 4 times this week and picked up the trash on both sides of my street, because if I don't pick it up on one side, it blows onto the other side. So that's my rant on the garbage. My real question is to Brianne in the same genre of the tickets. I'm glad that you put more people in the budget, or however you've done it, to process tickets. And I'm glad that people are ticketing more. My question is to you is, how is the city tracking whether or not tickets are being paid when a large majority, and I'm only speaking on my block, but I'm sure this is systemic throughout the whole city, are being ticketed to Maryland and Virginia ticketers who don't pay the tickets because there's no way for the city to force them to be paid. The only ones that are forced to be paid are those of us who are registered in the district. And when we go to register our car, if the tickets aren't paid, we have to pay them or they won't register our car. There are, on my block alone, I can tell you at least 7 or 8 cars that have Maryland and Virginia tags that live in the apartment building across the street from me. They never move their car for the straight cleaning. They get ticketed. I stood out there just yesterday and watched the man walk down the street and put almost 20 tickets on cars that were registered in Maryland and Virginia. And I witnessed a couple of people come out, get in their car, rip the ticket off the front of their windshield and throw it in the street.
Hey, Patrick, I get where you're going with this. So in the interest of time, if you let me jump in, I think I can address your concerns.
Yeah, I was finished anyway, so.
Well, perfect. You probably heard our earlier conversation about the litter cans, in which I said we've been trying to inventory all the missing ones. And also you probably just heard me say that I don't think there should be any wrong door for trash disposal. So do me a favor and make sure that the missing cans are in 311 and send me the locations via email so that we can work on getting those replaced. The ones that have been removed on Georgia Avenue are a particular pet peeve for me, because now my beautiful blue recycling bins that I paid for and had installed are being used as trash receptacles, and it like hurts my soul every time I see that. So for those who are not paying their tickets, we have to boot and tow. I put more money in the budget for booting and towing, and as I mentioned, the I can't even remember the name of it, the electronic booting that requires no people to remove it. So we're on our way. You know, this is a new assignment to me, but that's a huge focus of mine. And the other piece of it is not just like people who haven't paid the tickets, but dangerous people who haven't paid their tickets. Right now, there isn't really a priority around scofflaws who have moving violations. And so one of the things I plan to work with DPW on is how do we make that the priority with the people that we're actually putting out in the enforcement world. And also, this hasn't really come up tonight, but is on top of mind because we had a parking enforcement officer who was attacked Saturday night while she was on the job by someone who received a ticket. More safety measures for our parking enforcement officers. And one idea that we're talking about is body-worn cameras for them, which is something that we got to do for police when I joined the council. So I think that can be a good safety measure for our workers, and also an accountability measure as well as we move forward. So stay tuned on that. Thank you.
Great. Cedric, go ahead and take the next person, and Commissioner Jones, can you go ahead and get the timer up?
Hi there. My name is Courtney Stockland, and I've lived along with my family on Seton Street and in the neighboring streets for a couple decades. Thanks to the council member and the commissioners for being here tonight. Our community has major concerns about the situation unfolding at 17th U and V Streets. It seems to be a runaway train from our perspective. The transfer of that land from public to private, the huge leap from MU4 to MU10 zoning, and the gigantic apartment building that will be built up right against our quaint little neighborhoods. Please press the brakes. As a community, we feel disenfranchised by this process already, and it seems our voices are not affecting even these early stages, which shows us that we will have no say in the phases of this monstrosity, which seemed to be a foregone conclusion from the city's perspective. Split zone that site, whether it's a literal split zone or major setbacks, that's the solution. Anything else is simply overdevelopment fueled by essentially poor urban planning and greed on some parties' parts. The step down at V Street you mentioned, that sounds great. We need one on 17th Street too. But the overall capacity also needs to be knocked way down. There needs to be a robust parking solution on site, and we need to keep our police and fire station at the site as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney. So we've had some discussion about this tonight. A few things that I think are new that I should respond to. One is it hasn't been decided yet if that site will be sold or leased. One of the things I've been pushing for more of is long-term leases so that after a certain period of time, we're still the landowners, and that we can control what happens next. But either way, we are going to be leveraging that public land to ensure we can get the most value for all of our priorities in the community. It is a priority in Ward 1 to build more housing and specifically more affordable housing. And because that is public land, we do have to prioritize it at that site. It's a very large site. We know we have to return the police and fire station there, and we also want other community amenities. And so because of that, we really do have to consider building taller. So there are lots of things that are still up for discussion. But I think one of the things that really is at this point a foregone conclusion is it's going to have to be taller than it is now. It will relate to other properties that are already on U Street and even other properties that are already in that area. So we can keep talking about where the step down is and all of that. But I think folks need to understand that this is public land and that there is a specific goal for this site.
Real quick, only because it's been a really, really tough subject for 1B05-year-old zone. Last meeting, my speaker was off, so not many people have heard what I had to say or what they've had to say. I was actually going to reach out to Lauren, and now that you're online, let's get coffee. Let's talk about 16, 17 a little bit. I just want to get a couple more things besides the resolution, which I think Vice Chair did a great job on. There's just some things that I need to clear up with make the community at ease a little bit. It's like throwing a rock in a bee's nest. The area is going with the 16, 17. It's a lot for everyone around the area. And maybe you and I can have some coffee and talk offline. Thank you.
Cedric, go ahead and take the next person off of mute. This is the last comment. But I will just reiterate that there's no development on the table. There's no RFP that has been issued for 1617. This is simply a map amendment that is going in front of the Zoning Commission in June. If there is further community comment about that, happy to hear it during ANC 1B meetings. But we can also share how you can comment to the Zoning Commission, who ultimately rules on this. Cedric, can you go ahead and take thank you.
And I've been trying to answer the others in writing as we
Thank
go.
you.
So, yeah.
Good evening. I'm Dorothy Duffins, a social worker at the Terrell Short-Term Family Housing Facility. And I just want to thank Councilwoman Nadeau for coming on Saturday. It was just awesome with my sorority, and we just thank her for her service. She rolled up her sleeves and helped us with the donations for 5 families. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing it.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Nadeau, for spending quite a bit of time with us this evening.
Yeah, sorry. It's a lot of time. I hope the rest of your
okay.
meeting is quick.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Next up, we do have Mr. Christopher Dyer from DPR. You should, if you have a presentation, you should be able to share that.
Yes. I'm trying to find it, of course, on my... Oh, there it is. One of these years, after doing this about 822 times, you'd figure I would know how to upload screen. Anyway, guys, thank you. And by the way, it was exciting to follow Councilmember Nadeau, and also good to meet Lauren Lipsey from her staff in person this week. So this is very exciting. I've spent a lot of time here in Ward 1. My name is Christopher Dyer. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the DC Department of Parks and Recreation. And one of my responsibilities is to be sort of the person and the mocher of DPR in the community. I love working with the ANC commissioners and civic associations as sort of your concierge to answer questions you might have about DPR. I was so inspired by the work you guys do that I decided that I don't have enough going on at night. I'm also an ANC commissioner as well in ANC 2F05. And let me tell you, our meetings are a lot less exciting than some of these meetings that I've been to. So I really greatly appreciate the work. I've had some fun working with a couple of you. Chair Harris, it's always good to see you again. Commissioner Hanrahan, it's nice and lovely to see you through a box. It was nice to meet you in person at Casey Lewis. But anyway, enough of the folks. And if you've hadn't, and I know that I owe some people emails as well. For those of you who do not know, DPR is the #1 park ranked system in the country. Again, we're very excited about that. We host programming and events year-round in 244 sites across 900 acres of green space in all 8 wards, and we also have about 100 plus different capital improvement projects in our construction pipeline to support the district park system. So we're a bit busy. It's exciting. Here are some of the DPR sites in ANC 1B. We have the Euclid Street Gardens, Harrison Rec Center for outdoor space. Casey Lewis is ANC adjacent, actually. It's interesting. I discovered that. Reader Bright Family and Youth Centers, run by a partnership through the Latin American Youth Center, and of course, the park at Ladroit, which is sort of one of the big parks downtown, and the Westminster Playground, which is a little bit closer to where I live. So some good sites. Here are some websites that that we always like sharing. The dpr.events site is a list of all the upcoming events at DPR. And as we get closer to summer, that page will be even more robust. dprprograms.com is a place to go if you're interested in signing up for a program. dpr.dc.gov/locations if you want to find a facility in DPR outside of ANC 1B. Also, dpr.dc.gov/permits is the one-stop location for how to host an event at a DPR site. Also, we have dpr.dc.gov/DPR calendar for information about programs at a specific site. And finally, you can go to dpr.dc.gov/DPR alerts to sign up to get alerts. In fact, I will try to find this. I had it written down somewhere in an exciting way. You can actually text DC DPR to 888-777 to receive DPR text alerts to receive live updates about facility closures. So if you're on your way to go swim at Marie Reed and we suddenly have to close it, you can get an alert from us so you don't have to schlep over to Marie Reed. It's a lot of fun, and I don't know, fun if getting an alert about something, but if that is an option that you have, we would love for you to take advantage of that. And back to the screen. So a couple other quick things. We do programming year round. Visit dpr.dc.gov/DPR account to get a to Rec Track account. And there's also some additional information on how to register for an account or to qualify for reduced rate. We had a very successful increase in the number of people who applied for a reduced rate application, especially in the lead up to summer. Summer camp system season, which just ended. We strongly encourage you to go ahead and do this if you haven't already done so, because right now, once you qualify for reduced rate, you'll be eligible for reduced rate year round. As I said, we do offer programming in all 4 seasons. Please ignore the slide header for 14th and Oak Street Parks Project. Summer park system, our summer citizen season, which will start, our next registration season for summer will be May 15th and 16th. More than likely, we will be doing the aquatics programming first on the 15th. I am unsure whether or not we are going to replicate the lottery or not, but we will, of course, send you information about how that will happen. And as commissioners, you guys are really awesome and helpful in getting us that word out. So keep an eye on it, but 15th and 16th for summer programming. And then the fall season is August 16th. Winter season is November 1st. So if you have any additional questions on DPR activities or need specific assistance with an issue, contact me. My cell is 202-702-9453. My email is christopher.dyer@dc.gov. And again, I really greatly appreciate the work you as commissioners are doing on behalf of the residents of the District of Columbia. I especially love your salaries for this work. Again, I love government service. I love working for DPR. We bring the fun where the fun happens. And so I hope I get a chance to work with you guys. And feel free to poke me with a stick if you have an issue. And I'm going to stop the sharing and open the questions for, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. I look forward to your questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, and always a pleasure to have you. If you want to join every meeting and give us any GPR updates, but I think something we should add to our ANC 1B site is the summer registrations. I think that could be really helpful, and then we'll absolutely make sure that we share it out as well.
I appreciate that. Also, we just finished our summer camp. I think, by the way, there is a chance that we have some spaces left over in summer camp that might be coming out in case there's any last minute need. I am waiting. We're clearly, we've gone through, it's a very interesting process. We did this lottery for the first time this year. I think it worked out. I did actually, but there might be some open slots that happen because people might not have paid. So please keep an eye out for that. That might break next week. So again, I appreciate whatever you guys can do to help promote the work that we do here.
Great. Thank you. Are there any commissioner questions? Hearing none, are there any community questions? I'm not seeing any in the Q&A. If you have any for Chris at DPR, please add them into the Q&A. If not, Cedric did share his email address and phone number. So if you have those, you can direct it to him, and I'm not seeing any hand raised up there. Up, Commissioner Handerhan.
Ah, good.
I'll just thank you for joining us today, Chris. I would just say for the other commissioners in the community, you're one of the most responsive people I've ever worked with in district government. So really, really appreciate that. I also think that there is amazing public space in ANC 1B, but not nearly enough of it. And so I think it's really incumbent on us as community leaders and the community members that know the spaces the best to come to the table with ideas. And you've never said no to an idea yet, which I really appreciate. But I think that,
yeah,
I mean, it's always I'll look into it. So really appreciate that. And I really do think that I would just encourage folks to reach out if you have a kind of nagging question about a public space in your immediate community. We've had, we're doing some really great stuff around Casey Lewis, and I just really appreciate the support.
Also, if you guys have a question about whether or not a park or a public space, I mean, what's really interesting about DC is not every green space is ours. Some of it's national park, and actually some of it's even DDOT. So if you have questions about a specific space and you're not a map DC GIS map geek like I am, feel free to email me. I'm always happy to try to find an answer. It's especially fun when I can ask our capital projects team, who works right across the cube farm for me, hey, do you know where this is? And it's a nice diversion from our drudgery of responding to other emails about why we can't get into a camp. Again, and Commissioner Hendren, I really loved, thank you for poking us with a stick gently about Casey Lewis. I think that there's going to be some good stuff that can happen there eventually as a result of your advocacy. So it's always good to see everyone.
I know the next person who could be James Cornyn. I'll tell you that. That's you, Commissioner. You're good. You're good.
I try. I've had some experience. I've gone to a lot of meetings, lots of meetings. Again, so thanks guys for everything. And Commissioner Lockhart, I'm going to try to get an answer for you about the fountain at Harrison, but I have to rely on DGS. Oh, interesting, guys. If you see something in a park that needs to be fixed, DGS is not always connected to the 311 system, but a pro tip, if you tweet at them, they will know. Also, feel free to email me if you see something that you need to get fixed, and I will direct it to the right spot.
Yeah, Chris, that water fountain has been down for a couple of months, and I believe I did file a work order with DGS, but they have been slow to respond. And so it would be great if there was a little bit more urgency applied to it, since it is likely next week it'll be 90 degrees, just how the weather goes in DC. So it'd be helpful to have that.
if you could check to see if it's on, I'm wondering honestly, because we do turn a lot of our water and fountains off seasonally. And I'm still trying to get an answer whether or not it was turned off seasonally, but if it's broken.
It's not turned off. It's like completely like down, like on
Okay.
its side.
Yeah, it's
Like
ripped out of
someone
the. It's ripped out.
ripped it out of the.
Darn, I was hoping it was a really simple solution like it
Oh
had
no,
to.
oh no. It's.
I will, oh God. Yeah, okay. Never mind.
I'll,
We'll try to we'll look
I'll
into it.
send
We'll
you-
keep. Yeah.
I'll
No,
send you an email. I also let someone, I do have a neighbor who works at DPR, so I let him know as well too. But I will send you a picture and hopefully we can get it resolved soon.
yeah, no, I'm thinking that if it's broken, then it's more than just a simple turn things on, but it'll be added to my list to talk to Glenn about when I see him next, and we'll continue to work on it. So.
Thank you. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions, but thank you for sharing your contact info. I'm sure we will all be in touch at some point, and thank you so much for joining us tonight and giving us a little bit more of a background of DPR, especially as it relates to 1B.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys. Keep up the good work. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. And I know there are two questions in the Q&A, but they were not related to DPR. Office of the Mayor, Gerard Allen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I got a couple of updates for you guys. I'm going to start with, got one day left, Small Business Week. Mayor Bowser declared April 30th through May 6th is Small Business Week to honor and assist, celebrate the exceptional resilience and innovation of small business owners across the district. To honor the district's 70,000 plus small businesses, Mayor Bowser will host a series of events, summits, as well as announce upcoming grant opportunities for small businesses throughout the week to highlight further this administration's continued and ongoing support of small business. Events during DC Small Business Week 23 are free to the public for limited space. Teacher Appreciation Week, calling all DC businesses who love DC teachers, please join the Deputy Mayor for Education in celebrating our hardworking educators May 7th through 13th. During National Teacher Appreciation Week, RCDC is collecting discount giveaways and events to share with teachers. All the information collected will be shared on the RC website and social media channels. Also, my last update, tomorrow ends DC Latino Restaurant Week. So if you miss your chance to experience, try to get out there tomorrow, as that's the last day. Not a problem. Just follow the mayor's office on Latino Affairs, their social media, get a full list of participating restaurants and support your local Latin American kids. And I'll add two more things. Tomorrow, I'm doing a walk. It got a little remix. The route originally I wanted to do Detroit, but I talked to Commissioner hand in hand, and I'm going to do that on a separate day as that's kind of a bigger area to cover. I just kind of want to do it a different way. So we're going to start tomorrow at the Whole Foods, DPW, DOH, and DDOT agencies will be on site. Any questions or concerns, you can raise them. I've sent some questions out to them already, so they can come with some answers or, some new information for you guys. And my last thing, so I'm at the halfway point of my motor job, so I'm going to be doing more in community things. It's getting hot out, so I'm organizing some events where smokers come with multiple agencies, and it's more about meet your like the core team, like Justin might be there, meet Justin, get his information, give him any concerns. I have Caribbean Affairs there. I have deaf, hard of hearing. I'm gonna mix it up for the next 6 months and just have like at least 3 or 4 other agencies with me. Hopefully it's an event going on in the community where I can kind of, we can add to the event. But just keep that. And if there's anything going on that you guys got on your radar, feel free to throw that at me. Call me and we can have a conversation as I'm still ongoing organizing these events. And that's all I've got. Questions and comments for me.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Sorry, you may have said this and I may have missed it, but for tomorrow's neighborhood walk that's meeting at the Whole Foods, that's on the Whole Foods at 9th Street.
Yeah.
And
right,
would you remind me what time that's going to start?
11 o'clock. Sorry about that.
11 a.m. Thank you. And just one more time, the agencies that are going to be present there are
DPW, DOH, Department of Health, Public Works, and DDOT.
Thank you.
It's possible I might have DVH with me, but they haven't confirmed. That's kind of a last minute one. Them or either the encampment team. I'm trying to get either one of them to pop out, but I'm still awaiting. They've been having a busy schedule as of late. So if one of them or 2 of them show up, they'll be added for Jim. All right. You guys have a great night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Allen. And sorry, my dog is pawing at me. I'm trying to move her. If you can share the dates and times for those meetings that you plan on having, or kind of conversations with different staff, we definitely would love to share it out with the community, so we can get more people involved. So when you have those on the calendar, please let us know. I believe we have one community question from Mr. Patrick Nelson. Cedric, if you can go ahead and take him off of mute, and Commissioner Jones, if you can go ahead and start the timer.
Gerard, when you meet tomorrow with the group, I would attend, but I actually am going out of town tomorrow. Can you address with DDOT a question that came up at the Howard CAC meeting from the Shaw Main Street director in reference to the 9th Street one-way status that was put in effect and has been approved, and there were signs put up, and now the signs are gone, and we need to get some clarification on that. I had met with the team, I don't know, a couple months ago when we were addressing this issue, when the building that's going up now, I can never remember the name of it. It starts with an R. The issue relates to that, and they came out and did a site visit with the then ANC commissioner, who's no longer there. He's been replaced by someone else, but that's an ongoing issue, and it's causing some serious problems with people coming out of the Whole Foods. And due to the construction, and then now they're doing the 930 Club construction at the other end, they got to get some resolution to that. They were supposed to be installing some permanent signs, and they've only put some small no parking signs on the side of the new building, but we need to get some real functionality out of that, because the signs disappeared. I don't know why they were taken down or what they weren't, but that was answered by DDOT, and need to address it so that it gets put in permanently. Thanks.
I got you. I'll get back to you with the answer to that question. All right, perfect.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Allen. I realized too, we do have, Lauren, I know you're still on. If you had anything to add, we did take your portion off of the agenda because we had Councilmember Nadeau, but if there's anything quick that you wanted to add, I just wanted to open that up for you.
No, thank you for that. I don't have anything additional to add. Is it okay if I stay on for the remainder of the meeting?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I was not also.
No. Thank you for asking. I don't need to take up any more of your time.
Thank you. Are there any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Jones.
1 minute. Let me timer myself as well. All right. So on Tuesday, May 30th, from about 3:45 p.m. to about 6 p.m., City Blossoms, which is a local nonprofit that works with kid-driven gardens, has a garden work day at Cardozo Education Campus. The garden is located near the corner of Clifton Street and 13th Street Northwest on the Cardozo Education campus. All helpers age 11 and older are welcome to join. There will be weeding, planting, and other basic garden maintenance tasks. If you need community service hours, they're eligible there. So just a reminder, that is Tuesday, May 30th, 3:45 to 6 p.m. at Cardozo Education Campus. The ANC 1B newsletter that was sent out earlier this week has more details as well. And again, that is run by City Blossoms. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones, if you can share any info into the chat, I think that will be helpful because I do believe DCPS requires community service hours. And, I think school is probably out in a matter of weeks. So if there's anyone who attends DCPS or has kids in DCPS, I think it might be particularly to high schoolers. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, but this is a good opportunity. Thank you. Commissioner Fields.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to reiterate that the Public Safety and Community Engagement meeting has been moved to Monday, May 8th to help accommodate the Transportation Committee meeting. And we will have the option to meet in person. We'll be at the Anthony Bowen branch of the YMCA. So that's 1325 W Street on Northwest. And we're going to be starting at 7 p.m. sharp in the community room. And then additionally, the Vermont Avenue Gardens work party has been moved to this Saturday due to weather conditions, and they are still looking for volunteers. And I believe they're going to be starting at 9 a.m. So those who are interested can email Jeffrey, who is the lead coordinator for that. I'm going to try and drop his email in the chat. I think this only went to hosts and panelists, but if anyone could resend that to everyone, I'm not sure how to do it from my phone. But those are the only announcements I had.
Commissioner Fields, thank you for the last part. And I believe Cedric will reshare kind of the email address. If you can add also any other details around the event, just to put it in chat so people have it available. But we still haven't gotten to committee updates. So if you're worried that we skipped public safety and community engagement, we did not. So if you want to reiterate that quickly when we get to it, I think in one other item, but thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It was confusing. We changed some things around this meeting. Okay. Are there any community announcements? If there are any community announcements, please add it into the Q&A or please raise your hands. And I am not seeing any. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay. Oh, nope. Sorry. Something moved. Okay. Reports and action items, financial reports. Commissioner Lakatos.
1 moment.
Commissioner Lakatos, I think you said 1 second, but
Sorry,
then
apologies. Small apartment. The fiscal year 2023 quarter 2 financial report. Commissioner Jones, or can I share my screen? Am I able to share my screen? All right, Give me 1 moment. Let me get the agenda up here. So this is for the second quarter, which covers January to March. All right, let me get this on the screen. 1 second. Thank you for bearing with me. All right, can everyone see my screen? Thank you. So to be clear, we have made expenditures after March, but in order to, handle the initial approved administrative costs and the security fund, there were only 3 specific expenditures. One for USPS PO box, one for bank fees for $9, and the $50 in the security fund. We are moving forward with paying the retainer for our attorney and for making other payments, including for the sponsorships. Those will be reflected in the next quarter's financial report. But these are the only specific matters. Ending balance being $198,446.65. We now have a debit card. That's an update, not as a part of the report. But let me stop sharing my screen. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none.
Can you provide Commissioner Alexis, can you just provide a very quick, what are the months in Q2 for those of us who operate on different
Yes.
or different month quarters?
The district government operates on the federal fiscal quarters. So Q2 is January, February, and March of 2023.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the FY 2023 Q2 financial report? Commissioner Jones.
Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve the fiscal year 2023 Q2 financial report as presented by Commissioner Lakatos.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next, public safety and community engagement, Commissioner Fields.
Hi, so you guys already got this update, but again, we'll be meeting on May 8th at the Anthony Bowen YMCA, 1325 W Street in the community room, and we'll start at 7 p.m. sharp. That's all we have for now.
Thank you. Zoning, preservation, and development, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Give me one moment. The Zoning Preservation and Development Committee in April discussed only one item. Please note that at that meeting, the committee did not have a quorum, so this item could not be voted on. What I'm recommending today is based on my own opinion, and because there's not a quorum, cannot represent the majority opinion of the committee. At 941 Westminster Street Northwest, which is in 1B02 and the single member district from which Commissioner Holohan is elected. There is an HPRB case that will come up. This is a modification of a previous request that this commission supported in the previous calendar year, in the previous term. Previously, this commission supported allowing a back and roof deck on the property at this location. The previous rendition of the plans involved a spiral staircase. The applicant is resubmitting the same plans, but instead of a spiral staircase, they're asking for a straight walk-up staircase. The reasons are safety. It is safer for people who have limits or challenges to their mobility, including people who move more slowly, people who are older, people who have joint issues, and children, to have a straight up stairwell versus a spiral staircase. For those reasons, the applicant is changing the style of staircase. The change will not be noticeable from the front street itself. The change will be visible from the alleyway and from adjacent streets that provide a view down the alleyway. My view is that this does not impact the historic character of this area. The applicant demonstrated that from the main view, that is from Westminster, there will be no impact whatsoever. The only reason that this is even up for question is because from some streets you can see down the alley, the applicant demonstrated many other decks and back porches in that same alleyway that have a variety of different staircase types, including run up, including spiral, and to the degree that the back part of this alley has a historic character, what the applicant has proposed does no, in my view, does no additional harm to that historic character. For that reason, I'm going to suggest in a moment that we, as a full ANC, support the applicant's revisions to the permit application to HPRB regarding the upper and lower roof deck at 941 Westminster Street Northwest. I've spoken to Commissioner Holohan about this, and he can say in his own words in a second, but my understanding is that he does not have any concerns with this development, with this change to a private property in his SMD.
Are there any commissioner questions or comments? Sorry, Commissioner Holohan.
I truly do not have concerns about this person's stairs.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner or community comments? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the ANC support the application at 941 Westminster Street Northwest to HPRB regarding an upper and lower roof deck at that location.
Seconded.
Do we have a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. And I just want to, I know this is your second point and I don't want to steal all of your thunder, Commissioner Jones, but I want to comment, especially on some of the Q&A that we got in today. And even back in April, I learned a lot of what I know about zoning and just like the process in general of HPRB versus HPO versus BZA. And I know I'm like throwing out a lot of acronyms and I can break those down further, but I won't, just to spare us some time. But I learned a lot about DC's processes through the ZPD committee. So I would highly recommend community members to join the committee. Commissioner Jones has his email and I'm sure he would be happy to share it into the chat. But this sometimes it's a bit of a grind when you hear about projects like this, but you do sometimes get to add in even more input to other projects. I know 1617 was not heard by ZPD because it is a public parcel and that went to our Economic Development Committee. But please, if you want to learn more about, the district's process and how they handle zoning and even historic preservation, I strongly encourage community members to join ZPD.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My final point is that our next meeting of the Zoning Preservation and Development Committee is Monday, May 15th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. Registration, as always, can be found on the ANC 1B website, anc1b.org. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Economic Development, Commissioner Handerhan.
Good evening, everyone. Not a ton to discuss tonight, including no votes, but I did want to address 1617 U Street. As folks know, just for context, ANC 1B passed a resolution at our April meeting in support of the upzoning with a number of, conditions or things we'd like to see at the site. It included setbacks, which were mentioned earlier. It did not include any sort of split zoning, which was also mentioned earlier. But I just dropped this in the chat and I think it'll be shared more broadly. There is plenty of opportunity to still engage with the zoning question, and this is the beginning of a very long process. It's tough to hear that neighbors feel like their voice isn't being heard, but we've had a lot of opportunity for that, and I think there's just not a consensus about the zoning piece in the way that there might be about other opportunities to develop the site. So I would make sure everyone has an opportunity to have their voice heard. You can either attend the meeting on June 26th, or you can submit testimony. You don't have to be there in person, and you can see everything at the link that's dropped in the chat. Again, that's June 26th. There's a couple other updates from the neighborhood that I will briefly share, but I want to recognize we're getting pretty late. One thing I will say is that the U Street Main Street did hire a new executive director. Her name is Lindsay Hicks, and she will be joining our next Economic Development Committee meeting on May 18th. We still also have not heard the DEMPED decision on which development team to proceed, that they have chosen to proceed with the Reef Center redevelopment. We are applying what I think is the right amount of pressure, weekly checking in to see when that decision will get made. We expect that imminently. There's no new update on the Housing Finance Agency at 815 Florida, which is another semi-public disposition type of property. Then the last thing I'll say is that at our next meeting on May 18th, we're going to talk about place management strategies for the U Street corridor. This might be a bid. We also heard from the Shaw Main Street leadership at our last meeting that talked about a number of the things that they do and the differences between the Main Street and the bid. We also discussed the changing lines between that's been proposed by Councilmember Nadeau between the various bids in the corridor. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, please join us at our next meeting Thursday, May 18th at 6:30. Happy to answer any questions.
There are any community questions, please raise your hand. Are there any commissioner questions? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Handrahan. Next, we have transportation. Commissioner Lakatos, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Harris. So the Transportation Committee met in March. We had only one item before us. We didn't have a quorum. That item is here on the agenda, but I'll let Commissioner Jones speak briefly. We're not planning on not voting on and reconsidering it at the committee in the next month. And I'll let Commissioner Jones speak, and then I'll give the last updates on transportation.
Thank you, Commissioner Lakatos. Thank you, Chair Harris. So the item in question is a naming of an alleyway in SMD 1B09 from which I'm elected. This is the alleyway between Euclid Street and Fairmont Street and between Sherman and 11th Street Northwest. Currently, that alley is unnamed. A developer is considering building single-family homes and lots that are accessible via that alley in the middle of the block. This is a common and legal procedure. The zoning is already in place for that. And in fact, historically, DC has had many alley homes. It's unusual that we have fewer of them. The issue is that that alley does not have a name, and there can be you can't even start the bureaucratic processes without that alley having a name. The plots don't have addresses. So the developer is asking that the commission pass a resolution supporting naming the alley. I have asked the developer and their representation to take a little bit more time to collect community input from the people directly on that block, which once again is between 11th and Sherman, Euclid and Fairmont. They have gone through the proper channels already, which is they presented in front of the ZPD committee on what their plans are. They presented before the Transportation Committee. They were prepared to present tonight, but I was not fully satisfied with the amount of public outreach. So I asked them if we could take a little bit more time to do that. And I will be working with them in the coming days and week or so to make sure that everybody who lives on that block gets an opportunity to give their voice about who or what that alleyway should be named after. As a result, I'm asking that we do not vote on that item tonight.
So I have a couple of questions on this, which I think need to be answered before even a name is taken. Is this just like a ceremonial name? Because, this is an actual a street established with a name for that street. So if someone lives in that alley, they will be, when they fill out their address, they will use that street name.
Yes.
That's correct. Currently, no one lives in that alley, or if they do, they're living there in an irregular living situation. None of the properties there are homes. All the in the legal sense, they're all garages or other outstanding things. There's no water or sewer to them. All of that are things that the developer is planning to change by building more single family homes in the middle of the block. The alley currently has no name whatsoever.
Yeah,
And
I'm aware of that. The reason why I'm asking is because there's a similar situation with 1250 U Street, where there are single family homes being built in the alley, but the address is being used for. Their address is 1250 U. It will not be used. They will not have a separate kind of address. I see Mr. Patrick Nelson's hand up, but I think what we need to double check on ourselves, do our own due diligence, is the process at which this takes place, instead of relying upon the developer, just because I want to make sure we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's, without just, signing approval that, we haven't missed a step. But Mr. Nelson, do you have anything to add?
Tucker, I'm just going to give you some information that you can look on yourself. That I don't know what that developer's telling you, but those lots all have street addresses. They're all street addresses that are abutting Euclid Street, and the back ones abut Fairmont Street. The same situation has occurred on lots that are on my block, which is on the other side, not in your SMD, but there are two houses that are being built on an alley, and one is an address on Euclid and one is an address on Fairmont. If you go to the OZ map address, which I think I gave you when we sat down and talked, and put in that square, click on the square, it comes up with an address. It's 1021 Euclid Street. All of those squares back there have street addresses. So this is not a situation where an alley needs to be named. There are some alleys that require namings, but these literally in the system are already street named already. So I don't understand why she thinks she needs to have a new name for the alley.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you for raising those points. I think we'll go back and make sure. I'm sure Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Lakatos have looked into this, but let's just kind of double check everything just to be sure.
Just echoing that, Chair Harris, I'm sure that the owner and developer of those properties would love to not have to go through this. So I hope, for everybody's sake, you're right, and so that we can start the construction of badly needed housing in our area faster and without this process. So thank you, and we'll double check on that.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Jones, and thank you, Patrick, for that context. Just moving forward, so our next meeting, before I say, I'm looking for new transportation committee members. I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday. I'm having a conversation with an interested committee member tomorrow. I will drop my information in the chat and I'll ask Cedric to send it. But at our next meeting, which will be next week, it says Tuesday. I have a personal commitment that came up last minute that Tuesday, so it's likely to be on Wednesday at 7 p.m. We will be discussing the Better Bus Network that WMATA released recently. I'll also send that in the chat. So there's a whole planned bus revitalization. A bunch of those routes run through 1B. Want to have a solid community discussion about that and how it impacts, our everyday uses. And I will see you all there. Thank you so much.
Great. Let's make sure too that we advertise kind of these meetings. I know that we have it on the calendar, but let's make sure they are kind of posted. I think, you know, what we're seeing here is an unfortunate trend, but this is kind of, I think, what happens with redistricting is that some of our committee meetings did not have quorum. So, you know, we did have fuller committees when it was, I guess, the old 1B. Now that we have kind of a newer or newly established area, we do need to do, I think, and this is for commissioners, we do need to do a better job at making sure that we have community members joining our committee meetings. So hopefully we all can share these meetings out. Okay. Next, alcohol beverage regulation, Commissioner Holohan.
Thanks, Chair. We've got two settlement agreements tonight. I'll move to pass in a block. First is Slice and Pie, Lucy, 2221 14th Street Northwest. It's a Class C tavern. Second is Cloud Restaurant and Sports Bar, 1919 9th Street Northwest. It's in 1B02. That's also a Class C tavern. Both were protested by the ABR committee. Both have been in negotiations with the ownership and management, and we've come to an agreement with the committee. Move to pass both of those in a block.
I move to divide the question.
Okay.
Just so we can vote on both individually.
Do we have a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, let's just go quickly. Can you give just quick 20 seconds on Slice and Pie, very quickly why we protested, and then anything we addressed in the settlement agreement?
Sure. Slice and Pie is 1B04. Commissioner Lakatos, would you like to address that?
Sure, really quick. There were some neighbor concerns about potential noise with the added entertainment endorsement. Had a conversation with the applicant and the representative. We're able to address those within the settlement agreement in terms of making sure the hours of entertainment lined up with, general sleeping hours, stuff like that. It's only indoor entertainment too, which is important.
Great. Do we have a motion to approve the settlement agreement?
I move that we approve the settlement agreement for Lucy Slice and Pie.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Thank you. I will note if there are questions, we can talk more about this. But settlement agreements, again, kind of an unfortunate name, but they are kind of more community agreements. There are oftentimes community members who come forward discussing their concerns. The community agreement or settlement agreement is used to kind of help to mitigate those concerns or actually proactively mitigate some of those concerns or issues that may come up. But this is pretty standard, and we do try to reach these settlement agreements before the protest process. Sometimes it happens during the protest process. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all, and we're able to resolve those, but that's a little bit rare because there's no other mechanism to bring even any of the parties to the table, including kind of the establishments or even the ANC. Next one, same thing, Commissioner Holohan, if you want to quick.
This is my district, but actually community member Frank Chauvin led the discussions on that with Cloud's attorney. I'd like to promote him to talk about this just a little bit to satisfy any of the membership's questions. Can we have him promoted?
Let's wait. Frank, if you want to speak about it, please raise your hand. If not, I do know that Cloud has been up. There we go. All right, Cedric, if you can go ahead and promote Frank. Frank, if you can also keep this brief, that would be great.
Yeah.
I guess I'll try. Brief. Thank you. Yes, it's my goal this year. Cloud is a tavern licensee, and they didn't previously have a settlement agreement. So this is the first one, and I thank Commissioner Hand for helping to get this done. The issue is there was a stabbing murder in the locale last spring, and my neighbors and I are opposed to violence in our neighborhood and violence that takes place in the clubs. So we wanted to ensure we had a settlement agreement that was a little more poignant and useful with respect to how they operate their security program specifically. And so we asked that improved language regarding wanding of patrons takes place upon entry, and that is going to take place in the new settlement agreement. And we also, in complying with some noise problems that we have that seem to be deep, sometimes running 2 and 3 years with some of our neighbors, that there is a good compliant, there are provisions regarding compliance with the noise regulation. So those have been added and agreed to, and I thank you for approving this as the commission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Fields, do you have a question?
No, sorry, that was from earlier.
Okay. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the settlement agreement?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
I move to approve the settlement agreement.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
The second piece on this, actually, if you can bring Frank back, this is another piece that he has suggested in the ABR committee. This is a letter about overconcentration of licensed establishments on the 1900 block of 9th Street Northwest. So a lot of discussion with neighbors and government agencies and with the councilwoman who was on earlier. Frank, if you'd like to come back and chat about this as well. Give a brief explanation.
Just real quickly, this issue of overconcentration. Overconcentration is one of the 4 items that this committee, the ABR committee, undertakes to look at appropriateness. And it's judged upon every time there's an application or a change in a license request for a substantial change. We look at the 4 appropriateness standards. Overconcentration is only looked at upon a new application for a licensee. And unfortunately, there is a de facto over concentration in the 1900 block at 9th Street. However, being that the limited resources of all of your volunteerships and being the limited resources of the community, we were not able to catch the overconcentration as it developed over the last specifically 4 years, but it's been ongoing and questioned by a past commissioner 12 or 13 years ago, but never acted on. So we're asking the ABR board, that's the now alcohol beverage and cannabis administration board, to give us some feedback whether they see the de facto overconcentration in this block, because we weren't able to provide the appropriate resources to my community that is now overwhelmed by the overconcentration. And so we're doing this as an end means just to get some understanding, because within the code there's 2 items pertaining to overconcentration in the 600-page code. That's Title 23 and 25 regarding alcoholic beverages. And only twice is it mentioned. One in the definition section, and it says overconcentration is when a entity or an establishment might pose harm or adverse impact to the community. And then secondly, it's mentioned in the 600 pages of code. It says that it shall be applied upon the application of a new license. If there is overconcentration, one may protest that license. So we didn't do that. And so this is just a back end request for the board to provide some clarity on a long overdue issue, important to my community and the whole corridor, really, and everybody actually in the district who lives near a bar and several bars and maybe multiple dozens of bars. So just asking that the ABR board provide some clarity, because there isn't any in the code and it's long overdue. So I
Sure.
thank you for your
Thank
support on
you.
this. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I think just, I know this has been a long discussion with the ABR committee. I think, though, what we need to do is also send a similar letter if, we vote to do this, that we send a letter to the Department of Licensing, and I'm forgetting the exact acronym, and maybe even zoning as well, too, because they have a say in, I guess, over concentration. I would also appreciate, I guess, some specifics around like what we mean, like when they want, if we're asking for clarification, like what kind of clarification do we want? Do we want a definition on over concentration? Are there any other factors that we want to ask? Because if we're just asking for clarity, I don't know if that's actually clear. So I think we just want to make sure that we are specific in that. I think they are aware that there are a lot of establishments in ANC 1B. I've had the chairman of ABCA now, not ABRA, mention how I was on many of the status hearing calls and other calls that we've had. But I think if there's any sort of specifics we can add in terms of, are we asking for a definition? What are we asking around over concentration? And then are we asking for, I guess, some sort of solution? If not, maybe that's later down the line. Are there any other commissioner questions or comments?
Is there a motion on the floor?
There is not, but I'm asking just for any questions right now. And then if there are any community questions, please raise your hand. I know I've been switching up the order of things, but I just want to make sure that, we've heard some feedback that we haven't heard from community members. So that's why I'm explicitly asking for it. Do we have a motion to send a letter to ABCA?
Well, we have some sort of language, but we would like to include licensing and consumer protection. And are there any other agencies we'd like to include in that motion?
That is up to the motioner. I would suggest that we do include the other agencies. Right.
No, I think that's fair. So the motion then would be the ABR committee recommends the full commission send a letter requiring with ABCA and licensing and consumer protection concerning the existence of overconcentration of licensed establishments in the 1900 block of 9th Street Northwest.
Do we have a second? Okay. Discussion.
I had a quick question. Is this going to affect the current standing of businesses that are in this block, or are we talking about the addition of new ones? I see from Commissioner Harlan.
No, this would have no impact on current establishments.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, thank you for your comments earlier, Chairperson Harris. So I'm not sure what letter we're voting on sending. My recommendation, I'm not going to make a motion yet, but I think that we should refer this back to the committee and have the letter written so we could actually vote on the letter that we're writing. Because even in the creation of the motion, we weren't really clear about exactly what we were asking. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the letter. It's just that we need to know what's in the letter. So my recommendation here is to refer this back to the committee to come back to us next commission meeting so we can actually vote on what letter we're sending so we all can agree on that.
Okay, we can do that. We don't have to do that in a motion. This motion let's go ahead and unless there are other comments, let's go ahead and vote on this and then proceed kind of from there. We do have a motion.
No, in that case, I'd like to make a motion to refer to the committee because that means that we're not voting yes or no on the motion as it stands. We can simply say, hey, we're just going to defer this to whatever meeting the committee decides to bring it back to us.
Okay, hold on. There is a draft letter.
Yeah, if there's a draft letter, that's great, but I didn't see it in the notes.
The agenda package does not include the draft letter because I did not receive the draft letter. If there is one.
I don't have a draft letter in my possession at the moment. Frank is telling me he has one, but I have not seen one in my possession. I'm happy to take it back to the committee if the committee needs. There is another point of new business that will come later regarding a racial equity piece that has been a long-standing conversation. I'm just going to say
sorry, I'm just going to put a pin because we have now.
I know I've waited a long time. Please, just like my.
No. We just have. Commissioner Hollihan. I'm so sorry. We just have a motion on the table and then another motion, so we just need to get through that. I'm so sorry.
That was relevant to the conversation, but fine.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to refer this to committee, such that we have a letter that we can vote on.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, I apologize, Commissioner Hollihan. If you want to continue, I'm really sorry.
No, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay.
Chair, I actually would like to hear what Commissioner Holland had to say because that might actually change my vote. He had something he was going to actually bring up, and I think it's important. Obviously, it's something that he has had time to.
No, and Commissioner Kinsick, I didn't cut him off. I tried, and so Commissioner Hollihan, if you would like to continue, I know there is another letter, and apologies if this was in conjunction with the same letter, but from what I read and from what I heard in the motion, it was not in the same, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
There's another matter concerning racial equity training and being involved in settlement agreements. That has been a 3-month-long conversation with member Karen Gall of the committee. We had no time to actually draft a letter, but the motion I was going to make was about a letter. Considering this is the new stance of the committee, I no longer will bring that up in new business. But I'm glad that I stayed on till 9 o'clock now to have this new standing rule brought forth to me. I'm just a little angry that this is now something that has been brought up now at this moment.
I understand, and I think to address kind of the concerns, I think one, I think it is important that we see things before we vote, but I also think that we should be flexible in that, one, we are all unpaid, we are doing a public service, we have to juggle many responsibilities. So if there is something that comes up from a community member that, and hearing from, a chair of that committee that has been long discussed, I think it is worth voting on. Well, I'm hearing both of you. I understand. I will say, though, we do need to try to be flexible and adapt where we can. And if that changes any minds, if we should vote on kind of that letter, by all means, I'm happy to push that forward. So it is up to you, commissioners, but I hear you, Commissioner Hollihan, and I apologize. I don't want you to feel that I cut you off or interrupted you. I just wanted to make sure that we moved through the motion.
That's a point of information. Is there like language, but it's just not in a letter?
I from what I know about this matter, I know there is language. I think if I personally would feel comfortable voting if there's any clarification on what we mean by overconcentration, if it's simply a definition, I think I'm okay with that. But I also understand if there is a majority of the commission that wants to see a letter.
Well, I think to Commissioner Houlihan's point about something new, it would not be new to not vote on something that we don't have in writing. And I feel pretty strongly that we can't vote on something that's not in writing somewhere. But I do think if it's in writing and it could be shared now and then I think that's a much different scenario. As far as I know, we're voting on like what someone said, which is not a new process, Commissioner Houlihan. We always have something in writing, even if it's not like a fully formed letter. And to Chair Harris's point about being flexible, I think we can be flexible, but I think we would need something in writing that we are agreeing is what the actual thing we're voting on.
And I think to Commissioner Houlihan's point, and this is me going off of prior knowledge of being on the committee, I know that this is not a new issue, that this has been discussed at length. And so if it is on record, all of our meetings are recorded. But if Frank has a letter available, we can promote him quickly to show the letter. But Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. On a similar note, Commissioner Houlihan, if you are in possession of the letter that you would like us to vote on, and it just did get shared for technical reasons, we could spend a few minutes with you reading the letter to us, and then we could vote on what you read to us. I would be quite happy to pursue that path. It'll take a bit of time, but if that saves us a whole month cycle, and if that's something that the chair would entertain, I would personally be open to that path.
So Frank just shared the draft of the Q&A. So if someone wants to read that out loud, it's short, it's not long.
I can read
Does
that.
someone want to read it out loud? I think.
I believe, point of information, I think that Frank's letter got cut off because of the amount of space in the Q&A on Zoom.
Oh, Frank, if you can post the other half of it. Sorry, I'm sure he's doing it, but Commissioner Houlihan, can you go ahead and read the first part as he's posting the second half?
Sure. So written, Dear Chairperson Anderson, as it's regularly scheduled, properly noticed meeting on May 4th, 2023 with a quorum present, Advisory Neighborhood Commission ANC 1B voted 5-2 to inquire with the ABCA board about overconcentration of licensed establishments as described below. Specifically, we're asking if there is an overconcentration per the DC codified laws in titles 23 and 25 of licensed establishments in the 1900 block of 9th Street Northwest. Simply walking down this block demonstrates a high concentration of establishments. Unfortunately, ABCA does not provide further guidance than a simple definition of overconcentration. So can you please confirm that there is an overconcentration in that area? As of April 1st, 2023, these licensed establishments, see list attached, are on the single block, summarized as follows: 21 retail alcohol licenses, for which 14 are tavern licenses. Issuance is pending for Posh Lounge. 4 are restaurant licenses, 1 is a nightclub, 2 are off-premise liquor stores, 1 is safekeeping. Please contact Commissioner Sean Houlihan, ANC 1B's Alcohol Beverage Regulation Committee Chair at 1B02@ancdc.gov, or myself, Frank Chauvin's email address. If you have questions or need further information, thank you sincerely.
Okay, this actually answers my question. So I think this is exactly something I was looking for. So thank you, Frank, for sharing that. And thank you for stopping us, Commissioner Houlihan, because I know that this is an important subject for the committee. Commissioner Fields.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to circle back to what you were saying about something about racial equity and Karen Gal. I didn't have clarity on that, or if that was pertaining to this letter.
That is not pertaining to this letter, so let's put a pin on that first, and then we'll go to that after we get through this. Commissioner Kinsick.
Yes, I actually took a look at what Frank and Sean are speaking of, and looked at the map, and I completely concur. I think that it's just legit, and I think now it could be voted on at this point. And I did also read Karen Gall's draft, which I have many questions for. So once I get those questions answered, I feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Just a reminder, let's focus on this letter and then we'll go to the other one. So I know that there might be questions if we get to that one. So Commissioner Johnson, I know that you had some questions. I just wanted to give you a couple of moments if you have any. It's now in the, sorry, it got moved to the answered portion. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it and just point, like we ought to actually pass a motion to reconsider if we want to rescind the motion to refer, just for good procedure.
Yes, I think we can absolutely follow that. I will reiterate, Robert's rules were set up for private meetings, not government public meetings. So just want to make sure that we're moving things along. So is there a motion to reconsider? Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. I move to reconsider the previous motion, which referred a matter of a letter about overconcentration to the committee.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Commissioner Johnson, do you have something?
Technically, it needs to be by someone who voted yes, but I think we can let it pass.
We can let it pass. That's not going to diminish or what's the word? I can't remember, but it's not going to remove what we have. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve and send a letter to ABCA and Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection?
I will make that motion.
Do we have a second? Discussion? Commissioner Hannigan.
There's a line that says simply walking down this block demonstrates a high concentration of establishments. I think because the whole point is kind of on the definition of overconcentration, I was wondering if it might be a friendly amendment to strike that and stick to like a little bit more of the fact-based approach. And if you're cool with that, I would support this letter otherwise.
You accept that friendly amendment?
Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Commissioner Fields, was that a nay?
No, that was a yay.
Okay. Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Hollihan, do you want to bring up the letter about racial equity now or new business? It doesn't particularly matter because we don't have any updates for administrative. I know we do have something else in new business though, but related to ABR anyway.
Right. And this is really, so first of all, thank you everyone for bringing that back and allowing for Frank to send that information in. I appreciate that. The piece that I was upset about was this racial equity piece. It's been 4 months, 4 months of negotiations with Karen Gall over this racial equity conversation when it comes to liquor license holders in the District of Columbia. We don't have a letter. She wrote up a resolution that was going to require every single liquor license holder in DC to mandate that their employees go through 8 hours of training, and that the liquor license holders would have to bring in 2 trainers, and they would have to pay for those trainers and pay for their employees' time to go through that kind of training. After conversations with the Office of the ANC, with the Office of Racial Equity, With ABCA, I tried to bridge a compromise because I believe in the spirit of what Karen Gall was trying to do because of her concerns over liquor license holders like Nellie's that have had previous issues with, issues of racial bias and real violations and complaints. So I thought something that could be a compromise was a letter to ABCA inquiring about the ability for ANCs to consider racial equity training in settlement agreements with liquor license holders in situations where there has been a real case of violations or complaints when it comes to racial bias. And that was agreed upon by Karen. And that was something I really wanted to take to this committee. I only have a motion for language. I do not have a letter because it was something that I wasn't able to get Karen to agree upon until yesterday. And I also didn't understand that that was something that this committee would need in order for me to bring that motion to a vote. So that is what I'm frustrated about, is because I don't want to have to come back to the table another month from now when that will be 5 months of negotiations. I'm trying to bring something to ask ABCA's permission to allow us to use racial equity in settlement agreements. So there's no motion really, it's just an explanation.
Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, I also, only because I've read this letter, and I think that the fact that Commissioner Holland has done a great job with this whole process. I do feel comfortable if he said he spoke to Karen Gall. I've worked with her before. I know it's almost saying opposite of what I just said for the last one, but I think that we could probably pass this along without the verbiage if we're comfortable. I do think we have the vote to pass it along. I know there'll probably be a 1 or 2 no's, but I think that would be a better resolution to go back, not going to the meeting again and saying we need another month to put a I mean, it's like it's just going to keep dragging, kicking the can down the field. And if he's saying they came into negotiation, I think it's time just to move forward.
I think though there's a point to be made here that if a community member or even if a commissioner feels really strongly about a subject, they should have a letter prepared. I think it is really unfortunate that, and forgive me, it's late, so apologies. I don't mean this to be like offensive, but if a committee member is holding a committee hostage because they're not passing or bringing forth something that they want, I think that is really unfortunate and that should not be done. So I will leave it at that. I leave it up to the commissioners. I think in terms of this conversation, I think there's a lot of merit to this. I think it's a really important topic. I would prefer to see something while also knowing that I've been on emails and I've been on committee meetings where this has been it's become at an impasse because, I think there's maybe some, it's just an impasse. I'm gonna leave it at that. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. This is an important and also sensitive topic. I'd see 2 ways forward. I am also not prepared to vote on a letter that I have not read and that has not yet been drafted. There are 3 ways I can see this. One is the path of just sending it straight back. Let me start my own timer, sorry, so I don't get carried away. One is that we send it back to the committee and that'll take another month. The other is that Commissioner Holohan.
No, we don't need to send anything back to the committee. There's no motion on the table. So just a note on that, and feel free to add on more seconds to your time. Sorry, Commissioner Jones.
I jumped the gun on my speaking anyway, so that'll make up for it. One is we can ask the committee to provide us with a letter that we can read and consider and then vote on. Another is that the chair of the ABR committee, that is Commissioner Holohan, can write a letter in his capacity as the chair of, or as a commissioner and as the chair of the ABR committee of ANC 1B that will not necessarily reflect the position of the commission. And that letter would need to say that. But there's nothing that prohibits Commissioner Holohan or anybody else from making any inquiry to any government body on their own behalf. And finally, there is a path that because of the sensitivity and importance of this issue, I hesitate to even bring it up. We could authorize Commissioner Holohan to write a letter on behalf of the committee if we gave specific guidelines on what that looks like. Again, I would prefer not to go that route, and I'd prefer to go either of routes 1 and 2, or frankly, both routes 1 and 2, which is the committee can draft a letter, and in parallel, Commissioner Holohan or anybody else can put a letter forward on their own behalf. But I echo the sentiment that I'm generally not prepared to vote on things that I do not know what they say.
Commissioner Holohan, do you have how would you like to proceed? I know that this has been a very long discussion, and I think it is. I'm grateful that you all have had it. I will also note, as I've noted to you, I think this is a very important topic. DEI and racial bias, like training, is very important. I don't disregard that. I will say, though, as someone who has worked in this industry and that knows about the different mandates, and also knowing sometimes how difficult settlement agreements are and sometimes can be controversial, even though we don't want them to be. There's no state, no jurisdiction that mandates DEI training, which, not saying that we can't be the first, but I'm saying that there's no precedence for this, which makes it difficult, and there's no urgency driver on this, which is very unfortunate, because I think we all recognize here the importance of this. But I leave it to you. If you would like to raise a motion, depending on kind of the options that Commissioner Jones laid out, or if you just wanted to comment and say, we discussed about this, and then go back to the committee, that's also an option.
I understand. This is solely on me for not understanding the procedure of this committee. So I apologize for that. I also didn't have time to, after coming to a compromise with Karen, to get a letter together. I will come back next month with a letter asking for ABCA to even consider allowing us to have racial equity be a part of settlement agreements.
And I'm happy to help you with that language. I'm sure other commissioners would be happy to help kind of draft this, because I know that we are just getting out of the really, really busy season of renewals. So I know that your job has not been easy at all. So I am very much happy to help draft kind of this letter, as I'm sure the other commissioners are too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So there's no motion on the table. Moving on, if you want to get into this, since we don't have something in front of us, but there's considering Owl Room, we're working on a settlement agreement right now. We don't have something in front of you, but it's asked to make a motion to approve the consolidated and amended settlement agreement for Owl Room pending the drafted consolidation and minor amendments for trash. That is in the chair's district. So if you'd like to talk about that motion.
Was that you just raised the motion? Do we have a second?
Just point of information, what's the motion?
It's to approve the consolidated settlement agreement. So these and the minor amendments to the settlement agreement related to trash.
And do we have that in front of us?
So these were settlement agreements. So there's about, so do we have a second
Yeah, sure, fair enough.
discussion? Okay, so this is, I realize that we don't have this. However, one, it is, these were previous, there's about 4 settlement agreements with Alvroom. So this is a new establishment. They took over the Marvin space. Marvin had multiple settlement agreements with the ANC and with, I think, a group of 5 and a civic association. So prior ANCs had already approved the settlement agreements. And this is to consolidate them because it is very confusing for anyone to search. Like I couldn't, even as the ANC, the only one I could find was from 2008. And there's nothing, that they are, that is really different. The only thing that we are adding is one more day of trash collection, just because the alley is very trashy. So that's all we're adding, and it's just consolidated. So it makes it easier. We are not doing anything different from what the ANC prior to did. We are just consolidating and putting that to ABRA. Now, it doesn't invalidate the other settlement agreements that exist, but we have no say in those. We only have a say in the ANC.
Just to be clear, are we simply consolidating everything that we voted on before? Or are we adding a day of trash collection?
We are consolidating and switching from at 2 days to 3 days. In our template settlement agreement that the ANC has also voted on, it is kind of like an X or a number that the commissioner can add in. This is a very, very standard thing. The trash collection on the next door neighbors are between 3 and 5. The reason why we're also adding a day is because the next door, the liquor store, had a rat issue. They don't even sell food. They had a rat issue and had to close down. So I'm playing a game of whack-a-mole of, okay, what are the proactive measures we can do? So we are only adding a day to this and consolidating them so it's one.
Thank you.
Commissioner Henry.
I just feel like kind of with the consistent with before, I'm totally comfortable with this. I just think if someone can like put the 1 to 2 day thing in the chat just so we're like crystal clear, I'd be super comfortable.
Okay. It is literally language that says under the agreement, trash, rats. It says establishment agrees to get their trash collected 3 times a week.
Yep, that's what I'm asking to put in the chat because I
don't have it on hand to copy and paste. Commissioner Hollihan, do you have a template settlement agreement?
And find it. I would just like to say that when we do these settlement agreements and we don't stray from the previously agreed upon settlement agreements, we actually don't bring these up for a vote. These are previously agreed upon, but we will find the language right now.
Just to be clear, I don't need the language of the settlement agreement. I just want to know what we're voting on.
We're voting on to consolidate the 2 settlement agreements that currently exist, which is simply copy and paste into one document, and to change trash collection to 3 days instead of 2 days.
I added that in the chat based on the template settlement agreement.
That is exactly what we are voting on. Okay. Commissioner Hanrahan, does that satisfy you?
So, I mean, I think it's 9:30, so I will share some thoughts offline, but I in general don't feel like we're setting ourselves up for success if there's like not some basic, like I understand you're really following this issue, but consolidating settlement agreements is not something I've ever personally like worked with, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I want to make sure I get it right.
It is similar to what you had to deal with Flash. So Flash had multiple agreements and it was going back, and consolidating those. It's not changing any of the language. It's literally making sure instead of ABCA having 2 on file, they just have 1 with ANC 1B.
Right. We never voted to consolidate. We just voted for a new one that would replace the old ones. So
we were advised by ABCA, specifically Miss Laverne Fletcher, to
no,
consolidate.
this is fine. I'm just saying it's not the same thing. It's not something we've done before since I've been on the commission. So I'm just trying to understand it.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. And again, I'm happy to share. I think the word consolidation I think that's what we're getting tripped up on. But it is literally because we have 2, it's just to make 1 document and there's nothing new aside from the trash. I wouldn't bring it forward after working with a number of these establishments to the ANC unless if there was anything different. So. Okay, Commissioner Holohan, was there anything else?
Mercifully, no.
When is your next meeting?
Oh, God.
I think it's Wednesday, May 17th.
Yeah, Wednesday, May 17th. That's right.
He has
Thank you.
officially left the chat.
Okay, so we don't have this in administrative, and I apologize because we kept forgetting to do this, but with those that have remained with us for the extent of this meeting, thank you. But I unfortunately forgot to introduce our new admin, Cedric, which you've seen him reply to chats. You'll likely see him on emails, but thank you so much, Cedric, for stepping in. Thank you to Commissioner Handerhan for handling a lot of this and getting Cedric on board. Also you, Commissioner Jones, for onboarding him as well. But Cedric, if you want to say a couple things, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all your help tonight too.
Thank you, Chairperson Harris. Don't know what to say, but thank you all for your service, and it's an honor to be supporting the work of the commission. And I'll turn my camera on. I'm worried about the lighting. Nope. But yeah, happy to help and looking forward to supporting the commission's work.
Thank you and welcome. Welcome to the fun of ANC 1B. You made it through your first meeting. Well, there's still maybe a couple minutes left. Okay. There are no other admin items. New business. Okay. Are there any other commissioner comments? Okay, since we have complete, hold on. Mr. Frank, do you have any other comments? Cedric, do you want to take Frank off of mute unless he just still has his hand up?
I just had my hand up, sorry.
No worries, thank you. Okay, since we have completed our agenda and I'm hearing no additional commissioner comments, this meeting is adjourned at 9:33 p.m. Thank you so much.